Welcome back to the ROKK Rundown. Rodell and I are here talking about a lot of exciting, there's a ton going on in Washington and really across the globe, sports-wise, and sports has a heavy intersection with politics.
Yeah.
So I think today's a good opportunity for you and I to talk about that. I'm curious, do you think an athlete can still be just an athlete without stepping out and making a political statement?
I think some can, but listen, I think the intersection of sports and politics goes back further than any of us are willing to admit. Everyone thinks that this is a recent phenomenon. It's not. I mean, everything. Go back to, like, for instance, like the 1932 Olympics. The idea that we even sent African American runners, Jesse Owens, to Germany. Germany was looking at this as a political event to kind of showcase like their vision of the world, this Aryans being these superhumans, so on and so forth. Jesse Owens goes and completely mops the floor with their runners. I mean, that in itself was a political statement. Or you go to 1968 and was it John Carlos and Tommy Smith on the podium raising the hand, the Black Power, and and that is an iconic. That is an iconic photo. So, I mean, you could just kind of see, where politics throughout the years has become a part of it. Now, I just think in the time of social media that you have to understand that anything that you do can be scrutinized, and that I think some people are okay with being out there. I think other people actually would like to just play ball, shut up and dribble, as others have said.
Yep.
But you have to be careful, especially if you don't want the limelight. You have to be careful in what you do, what you say, and how you portray yourself.
What do you think is a bigger risk, though, communications-wise? Does it make sense to have a position or pretend like you don't have one?
I think that if you're standing 10 toes down and you say this is what I believe and this is why I believe, then I don't think that in itself is a problem, right? I mean, now listen, you just have to remember that there are always going to be people out there on social media and others that it's a cottage industry of insulting and criticizing others. So my take on this is, if you believe it, just be willing to defend it. I think about a couple of things that happen. So, all right, we're both from New Jersey, big Giants fans, right? At least you're a Giants fan, right? Okay, great. All right, just making sure. Don't know if you've been following this whole thing over the last couple of weeks with Jackson Dart, right? I think this is a great communication lesson. Jackson Dart gets asked by the President Trump's assuming campaign committee or the White House to introduce him at an event that he was doing in New York. Okay, he goes and he introduces him, and then of course, obviously, it's on television and it's on on Twitter and whatnot. And one of his teammates sees it and who is not a fan of President Trump, and said something along the lines of, "I thought this, BS was AI. What are we doing here? Blah blah."
Right.
This happened 3 weeks ago. They're still talking about it. Part of the reason that they're talking about it is that there really isn't a lot else to talk about in football next until we get to
good point.
until we kind of get to some of the preseason games. But I think it's also a lesson in communications. A few things that could have happened differently. One is that Jackson Dart did not notify the team that he was going to do this. And for those who know, Jackson Dart is the franchise quarterback of one of the most storied teams. Regardless of your political opinions, if you're going to do something like that, you might just want to give your employer a heads up. His employer, I don't believe that his employer has any right to tell him not to do it. But might have said okay, if you go and do that, here may be a couple of pointers. Also, maybe you're a team of 53. Very diverse team with a lot of different views and so on and so forth.
Sure.
Might rub some of your folks the wrong way, so be ready for that. But Jackson Dart went and did it, and not maliciously. And one of his teammates saw it the wrong way. Now the other teammate, Abdul Carter, I think what he did wrong is he could be upset about it. He could feel a certain way about it. He could not support the president. But you don't put someone in your own organization on blast on Twitter and then delete it. This was a conversation that could have been held in-house, which they had to wind up doing anyway. Jackson Dart then had to put out a statement, and then this guy had to put out a statement, and now we're on week 3. So it just kind of goes to show what happens if you don't handle it correctly.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
No.
And I think you're right. It seems to have come full circle. The two of them said that everything is copacetic between the two of them.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, it's taken a lot away from the fact that it could have been a really quiet season, and everybody's now paying attention and dialing in.
Yeah.
Speaking of New York teams, what's your prediction for the finals, the NBA finals? How long does it take for the Knicks to finally do this?
Just listen. It's been. I am old enough to remember all of those years where the Knicks were the second best team and lost to the Jordan Bulls over and over and over again. I like what I'm seeing. I watched the first game with my wife and my 5-year-old, although I only let him watch the first half. Then I put him to bed, and my wife was super excited. I'm like, it's only one game. We still have 3 more to go. But this is another political, President Trump, who I think everyone knows that President Trump likes sports, and I think there's a more meta piece to why he likes sports and like how he views himself as as a man and a person and so on and so forth. Never heard this guy talk about the Knicks once, but he's going to Game 3 because the president likes a winner. So he's going to be there. So it will be interesting, just in the same way that not so much last year, but the year before, how many times football, when you're watching football on Sunday, how many times they would pan to Taylor Swift in the Kansas City Chief box. It's going to be interesting how, I believe it's ABC. ABC has the,
It is ABC.
ABC has the final. It's going to be interesting how they talk about this. Do they just show them the one time, or do they keep going back to them, and so on and so forth. And as you know, once again, half the country likes the president, the other half doesn't. And so even ABC, like their producers, have to sit there and think about, how do we do this in a way that acknowledges that the president of the United States is at a very major sporting event, while also not pissing off the half of the country, the people that are watching, that are like, we don't want to see President Trump, and we just want this to be about basketball.
Well, let's look forward to Game 3, and we'll have to come back with a report next week.
Let's go Knicks.
Thanks for joining us. Let's go Knicks.